All right, ladies and gentlemen, at the risk of making a pig of myself, I want to talk about cartridges and rifles for feral pig hunting. Feral pigs are a big problem in this country, and we've got Joseph Benedict with us to tell us some specifics. How bad are feral pigs?
You know, they are bad. People don't realize how bad in certain parts of the country. It's funny because across the country, wild hogs are looked at very differently. In parts of California, they're a prized big game animal.
Yeah.
And you have to buy a big game license and tags for
Wow.
wild hogs. In parts of Texas, they're considered, I almost said worse than your mother-in-law. I probably shouldn't go too deep down that rabbit hole. So
No.
Let me read you some specs, though, because this is amazing stuff. This is from the Smithsonian Magazine. Wild hogs are among the most destructive invasive species in the United States today.
There you go.
2 million to 6 million of the animals are wreaking havoc in at least 39 states, and 4 Canadian provinces. Half are in Texas.
They're even in Canada?
Yeah. 4 different
Wow.
provinces. Here's a fun one from Mississippi, where it gives some stats on the dollar figures. This is from a USDA study. It says wild hogs can be blamed for $1.5 billion in damages every year in the United States.
That's just crop damages?
Crop damages, yeah. This is feeding habits of wild hogs make them particularly destructive to crops, woodland habitats, levees, moist soil units, golf courses, and right-of-ways.
Now you're serious. Golf
right.
courses, oh my.
Wild hogs cause massive losses for farmers during planting, before harvesting, by trampling and eating crops and rooting up and eating seeds before they can sprout.
All right. So there you go, folks. We're just setting the groundwork for why we're justifying shooting pigs. But seriously, this is really a big problem. It's an invasive species. It's an animated weed. And they do a lot of damage in this country. They actually came in way back when De Soto, the Spanish explorer, was exploring Florida. They brought hogs along with them, and the hogs traveled as they moved through the country. So they always had a ready food supply, and they just foraged as they went. Of course, they escaped, and that started the whole problem. We've been here ever since. So a hunter can pretty much pat himself on the back for taking credit for helping control some of this stuff. And it's really a pretty inefficient control. So there are a couple of ways you can go at feral pig hunting. One is recreational, like the California big game animal. It's a challenge to hunt, excellent meat. Everything about it is quite similar to, I guess, in Europe when they've got the real feral hogs. They're not feral hogs. That's a game animal that are native.
Yeah, the Eurasian wild boars.
Yes, right. So you can approach it that way, or you can consider you're doing a cull or an extermination program to help out farmers, but not just farmers, hunters, native wildlife. Pigs are on the ground, sniffing, eating turkey eggs,
all kinds of small animal eggs, even small fawns and so forth. If they find them, they will eat them.
Yeah, anything. So that's really destructive. We are going to start destroying some feral pigs.
How is the best way?
Boy, I think we got some solutions right here on the table.
And like you said, Ron, I mean, it varies from sporting all the way to full scale elimination.
Yeah.
You know, probably the most recreational way to approach this full scale elimination has been perfected by the guys shooting suppressed semi-automatic rifles with night vision equipment, right? They have a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah.
Now, the full scale, like really dedicated, this isn't just about fun, but it actually is a lot of fun, is helicopter work. You know,
now, we're not talking sport hunting here anymore,
right,
folks.
That's pure
This is farming
damage control.
Damage control. There you go. Okay. All right. Let's go back to your suppressor. A lot of popular hunting technique is the suppressed stuff. I've never worked with suppressed much, but I like the idea of it. I've shot a few and I go, I get it. What you're doing is you're shooting a slow load under 1,100 feet per second. So if you're under the speed of sound, so they don't hear that subsonic crack of the load.
That's right.
And that's where things like these little guys, this is the 300 Blackout, and here's the 8.6 Blackout shooting a 33 caliber bullet. That's a crazy looking thing right there.
Yeah.
But the idea is you can drive a big, heavy bullet at a low velocity, and because of that bullet's mass and momentum, it's pretty effective at taking out hogs. You put a suppressor on the front of your barrel, that cuts the sound down some more, and the pigs don't necessarily know where it's coming from or even register it. And then you throw in nocturnal shooting with a special scope, and you can go 1 pig, 2 pig, 3 pig, 4, try to shoot some more.
5 little piggies.
Yes, this little piggy went to market. So, have you worked with any of this nocturnal night vision and the suppressor stuff?
A little. So I've worked with suppressors a lot. I've been shooting suppressed whenever possible for 10 or 12 years now. I'm a real big fan, big proponent of that. The night vision stuff, I've only done a little bit. Actually, this year in Argentina, we hunted wild boars at night, and I actually didn't end up using night vision on the rifle I shot a wild boar with. We ended up using a spotlight.
Okay.
And I had a split second to shoot it, but I did get it. So I haven't done a lot of the night time hog control stuff. I've got a couple friends that do it on a regular basis. I've seen their videos. A lot of these night vision scopes now have a button you can push, and they have a little onboard memory chip, and it'll record what that thing is seeing, including hogs going flop when you hear the action go, because like you say, if you're shooting a subsonic load with a suppressor, you can almost hear your action run on that rifle when you fire. So it's not silent, but it's a lot better than a great big boom.
Boom, right, okay. Well, it sounds like both of us need to probably have a little more experience of that. But in the meantime, we can talk about other ways of taking hogs. Since we talked about it as a sport as well as eradication kind of stuff, let's back up and let's go to it from the start. For me, which would be sport. I like to hunt deer and elk and all the rest. Why not throw pigs into the equation? Right. I think the classic argument has long time been hogs are really, really tough. Especially the old boars. They're not only big and massive, but they've got this supposed shield over their chest, etc. So you need something really big.
At least as big as that.
I know guys who think that's probably where you need to start. 50 BMG.
And if it has wheels, it's even better.
Azimuth. Boom. Yeah. But really, this is overkill right here.
470 nitro, yes.
Yeah. You don't need anything close to that big. It's something you can actually carry, handhold, shoot. I mean,
not to say they won't work. If you have one and you want to use it.
Yeah. If it's legal where you're hunting, you want to go for it. And that's another thing about hog hunting is you get to try a lot of different stuff. It's why not? You like a 4570, go for it. But you like something long, sleek, and fast like this 6.5 Weatherby, you can do some long range stuff on them. Set up on a bluff and shoot down on a flat irrigated field or something. There's a lot of options. So what have you hunted hogs with as a sportsman hunter?
Okay. So this one you're looking at right here, the 6.5 Weatherby. I had the opportunity to hunt California, spot and stock.
Yep.
Beautiful, near coastal country, and just a tremendous hunt. Lots of glass, and we finally jumped a pig actually at about 40 yards, and I shot him running lickety split up the mountain at about 55 yards with that 6.5 Weatherby.
Glad you had that long range cartridge.
Right. 127 grain Barnes LRX bullet. It just switched his lights right out. And he came rolling back down the hill. I've shot him with a few other things. I've shot him with handgun cartridges and with a 308. That's maybe the most practical all around sport type cartridge for wild pigs. I like the 308 because it's very accurate. It still has good punch and authority inside 300 yards or so. And if you're prowling around Texas, whether you're in the desert country on the west side or, the jungle in East Texas, it's great, right? I don't think it's a 500-yard elk cartridge, but it's really good for hogs. Yeah. And if you're that guy, you can build or buy an AR type rifle in 308, suppress it, put a thermal scope on it, and you've really got a very authoritative, effective setup. All
right. If you take a standard 308, 2,800 feet per second, 2,900 feet per second with a 150 grain bullet, you suppress it. How much of that suppressed sound is going to make a difference for the hogs? That's still plenty of boom.
There's still a lot of sound because what they're hearing is the sonic crack as the projectile passes them or hopefully passes through them, right? The others around them will hear that crack. they're not going to hear the same muzzle boom. So the first thing is that sonic crack seems to be all around them and it disorients them. They're not sure where it's coming from. And so they might run right towards you. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's not as effective as something like the blackout cartridges that are shooting subsonic. Mm-hmm. That said, there are specialty loads available for the 308 that push bullets at subsonic speeds.
Okay. Now, if we're talking 30 calibers, and this is real common, but a lot of folks have the 30-30 lever action. I think that's a great option because most of the time you're finding hogs when you're hunting them in the woods, in the thickets and stuff. Mm-hmm. So you're getting some pretty close shots. And then you've got the firepower, the quick action. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the ultimate woods whitetail rifle applied to pigs.
Yeah.
More than enough firepower there, more than enough bullet to take the biggest pig, right?
Yep. Low recoil, fast follow-ups.
Great little option. Let's go lighter than that. And I have. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys will shoot varmint rounds at feral pigs. Is that stupid or not?
You know, yeah, I think it depends on the situation. If you're hunting them like big game in California or someplace like that, you're glassing them, you may need to take a 300, 350 yard shot. That's not a real good choice. On the other hand, if you're doing control efforts at night, you kind of just don't care about the subsonic characteristics. You'd rather maybe have a flat trajectory and a little more noise than almost no noise and a bullet going bloop out at your wild pig. I think something like this 6.5 Grendel and the 6mm arc are really good for that. You can build them in an AR-15, still suppress it. So there's just kind of that little thin crack when it goes off.
Yeah.
Low recoil, lots of firepower. Put something like about any bullet will work if you're doing hog control, but a partition or a Barnes X bullet, something like that. So you drive through the biggest boar's gristle plate, that shield that some people worry about. Mm-hmm. I think they're a great option.
See, I have never had an issue with this gristle plate that everybody talks about. All my bullets have gone in, including a 50 grain 22 from a 221 Fireball. This was not a huge pig. It was probably 80 to 100 pound running across the field at night. And I swung through, we were hunting coyotes. And I just said, well, they want to exterminate their pig. Shoot that pig. Well, I'm more than happy to oblige. So I just swung through this thing at the edge of the lights from the truck and heard a plop, went out there and he was lying dead. 221 Fireball with a 50 grain VMAX bullet.
Yeah.
Had killed that thing. Yep. And I have taken prior to that with a 223 and a 22-250 and a 6mm Remington. I was out coyote hunting and came across pigs. And of course it's take out the pigs.
Right.
And it worked every time.
And I think what many people don't factor in, they probably know if they stop and, pause to think about it, but the gristle plate or the shield, as some people call it on wild hogs, typically grows on big old boars.
You're not going to find it on the sows or the younger ones.
Not as much. Yeah, you might find a healthy fat layer and maybe a little bit of cartilage up in there, but I don't think you're going to find that inch thick gristle plate on anything but an old boar in his prime and past prime. We're talking, potentially 250 pound up to 400 or more pound animals. It's a different sort of beast, right? So, I guess if you're just doing hog control efforts, I really wouldn't worry about the gristle plate. On the other hand, if you're hunting someplace in Europe for a world-class Eurasian wild boar and you're hoping to get giant tusks and all that, it behooves you to hunt with a cartridge that's capable of punching through that boar's vitals from any angle.
All right. So now we're going back to the sport hunting with a real boar.
Before we do that, can I just talk about this 223 right here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had the opportunity to participate in a Texas state hog control effort at one point years ago. So I went up for 2 days running with a helicopter pilot, right? This was not sport hunting. It was not billed as sport hunting. We were there doing crop protection services.
Okay.
And when I went up, I had an AR-15. The pilot had me put a shell deflector on top of it and test it thoroughly because he said one empty up into those helicopter rotors and we would have serious issues with potentially not coming home that night, right? Yeah.
Just the empty brass.
Apparently they're moving fast enough that they can hit that brass, it causes a chip. A chip can cause a fracture. A
A
fracture
chip in the
causes
blade.
the blade to
Oh,
come
yeah,
apart
yeah.
like spaghetti. Or,
Wow.
potentially. So just isn't worth risking it. So he was using suppressed ARs, and he buys his ammo by the pallet. 5.56, 55 grain, full metal jacket bullets.
Full metal jacket.
Yeah. And I said to him, how's this stuff work on big hogs? And he said, well, it works pretty good.
Huh.
You'll see. And if we have any that kind of are reluctant to die, I'll circle back and hover and you can finish them.
That's right. You can.
So, so we have the ethical finish right there at our fingertips, right? So we went to work and I shot quite a few hogs over the next little bit, but the most memorable one was a great big hog that hid in a thicket, and he lowered his helicopter right down over the thicket, and that hog came squirting out, and he shot up in the air so I'd have a shot. And I hit the hog, and then I hit it again, and it just went boom right there. To this day, that's the biggest hog I've ever shot. We landed the helicopter next to it and checked it out, and it was amazing how quickly. So those were shooting basically the equivalent of the old military load, and most of those full metal jacket 55 grain bullets would go on tumble.
Where did you hit this big pig?
Where
did you hit it?
Honestly, I can't remember, but it was down through the top of the back.
Oh, so you probably spined him.
Maybe on the second shot. The first shot, he just kind of went, hoo, and then I hit him again right away, and down it went.
But you got a response on the first shot, even though you didn't hit the central nervous system.
Visible
just
response.
A little 55 grain bullet. See, most people wouldn't believe that.
That's right. I watched my flight partner shooting a sounder, and they taught us shoot them from the back forward, right? And he was hitting them. These are mid-sized young pigs, right? Hitting them one shot a piece, they just roll. And then you get to the bigger ones. Sometimes you have to hit them a couple times. But actually pretty impressive how well it worked.
So I'm not the only one. I thought maybe I was like an outrider, the only person who ever shot a feral pig with a 223. It's standard operating procedure.
For him. Now, interestingly, he made one note. He said velocity is key to getting good terminal performance with these specific bullets. He said, I have I think it was like an 8 or 9 inch SBR, short barreled AR. And he said, it just doesn't kill them like the ones with the 14 inch or 16 inch barrels.
Okay, they have enough barrel to get your velocity up there.
Just that little couple hundred feet per second difference was either allowing them to pinhole through or causing them to yaw and break up and tumble.
Well, interesting. Okay. So those, I think the suppressors, the night shooting, and then the helicopter work with the 223, we've got the control efforts working out pretty well here.
Yeah.
And in the sporting efforts, we've already discussed the 30-30, the 308 family of cartridges. And you could go with something long and flat shooting if you wanted to stay really far back at a distance. I don't think I've had enough experience with it to say that is going to make it easier to shoot multiple pigs. I've shot maybe 4 pigs out of a sounder from actually it was pretty close range, and they knew they were being shot at, but it was just enough open area that I was able to go from one to the next before they got into cover and take them out. It would be fun to set up, say, 400 yards away and drop them in there to see what happens. Something like that would be the way to go, huh?
I think so. Most folks, I think, choosing a high performance cartridge, expensive ammo, right? They're probably hunting like big game, right?
Right.
But it certainly could be effective to shoot from an extended distance with any of the new modern high performance long range cartridges, especially suppressed, and see if you could trim some populations that way.
And while you're doing that, it would be a good chance to experiment with your long range shooting and get some experience in understanding what happens when you hit something at 5, 6, 7, 800 yards, if you really want to start pushing the envelope. And then you can work with your bullet. How does it work? Your wind calling skills, all the skills that you need to develop for long range shooting. Feral hogs is probably a good way to do it.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, what about the guys who love the 45-70?
Man, I'm one of them. That is one of my favorite cartridges. Yes. I think it's a tremendous choice, but it is not necessary right now. Our old colleague and friend Craig Boddington once wrote that I find the concept of being overgunned much more elusive than that of being undergunned. I personally believe there's no such thing as overkill, right? You can't kill something too dead. So
unless you want to eat it.
Well, yes and no. I mean, a 45-70, the old timers say you can get right up to the hole because you don't have so much velocity that you're destroying.
I was thinking more along this line.
Well,
for too
there
much
you go.
gun.
Yeah. Perhaps you have a point. But I think there's nothing at all wrong with shooting hogs with something like a 45-70 or that 450 Bushmaster next to it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a real popular item these days because you've got the firepower with the big magazines in your ARs. I mean, that's what a lot of guys like. It's like the 45-70 of the AR world would be your 450 Bushmaster or something like the SOCOM for the guys who are shooting a 458 SOCOM. But yeah, that's a good option. But again, how many of us with lever action 45-70s who love to shoot them get that many chances to shoot them at game? That's one of the wonderful things about this feral pig shooting is that you can get. It's not one tag and done. It's pig, pig, pig. As long as you can get out there, you've got plenty of subjects.
Exercise your favorite lever gun.
Yes, exactly. And really become intimate with it and understanding the trajectory because the 45-70 is obviously quite a bit different than most of our bottleneck cartridges that we're used to shooting. So you really need to get a full understanding of its arc, its performance, and what your long range, short range, medium range is a lot different with the 45-70 than it is with, say, a 270.
It is. I mean, I think it's probably optimal for almost a jump shooting hogs in thickets and run. I mean, just about any 45-70 bullet will do, but something, a controlled expansion bullet so you can shoot them tail to, tea kettle and go right all the way through and dump them over or whatever.
I was hunting feral pigs in Australia once with a 270 WSM. Fail-safe bullet, 140 grains, hog straight away. Took out, I may have the numbers a little bit wrong here, folks, but if I recall, it was 4 or 5 vertebrae literally shattered. And then the angle was enough that it came out, slid along the hide, came out, went into the neck. I don't know if the hog must have been turned just like that or something, but went over that shoulder hump when it came out, hit the skull at the back, and was lodged in the nose just under the skin. That's how much. That's a lot of penetration. But I don't think that hog jumped up and was running was probably 35, 40 yards away.
Yeah.
And that's where a bullet like a copper that's going to stay in one piece and really penetrate works. Whereas some of your more traditional soft point lead core bullets are going to flatten too much or skip on out of the animal and maybe not do the job.
Yeah, I had a opportunity on a Eurasian wild boar quartering steeple away on a quartering shot, and that bullet lodged in his ham. Didn't get all the way up in the vitals.
Really? It just stayed in the ham. What was the bullet?
It was a 308, 178 grain ELDX bullet.
Yes,
it was like 40 yards. It just
and that's where I was saying with the softer lead core bullets, you're going to get that kind of too much expansion.
Yeah.
There's your too much gun.
Yeah.
That would have been a 30-30. You might have been all right.
Any copper bullet.
Yeah.
Would have been all right.
Any copper bullet. But I think that's an important thing for people to recognize is that what seems to be too soft of a bullet is not, depending on its velocity.
Yeah.
Its launch velocity as well as its terminal. But there are bullets that are perfectly designed for performance out of a 30-30 or any of the slower 30s. And you put it into a high speed, you're going to reach the point at which that bullet gives too much impact energy and it expands excessively or breaks apart.
Absolutely. And we've got a couple cartridges right here that really exemplify that. You take a 6.5 Grendel, it really needs a bullet that expands easily because it doesn't generate a lot of velocity.
All right.
Then you take a 6.5, the 300 Weatherby, same bullet diameter, but it's going literally nearly twice as fast.
Yeah.
That thing probably needs a copper bullet or something like a Swift A-frame. To hold together on impact, especially if you end up shooting one close.
All right.
What do you think about that 350 Legend and the 44 Magnum on the end there?
You know, I'm thinking this 350 Legend is getting to be pretty popular with the hog shooters. I hear from them and they say, I got it for deer, but by golly, does it work on the feral pigs? And it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And again, you've got it potentially in an AR. Run it in your bold actions if you got but you've got that bullet weight just about optimum. You're pretty close to the 30-30 performance between those two. A little bit larger caliber at 35, so why not? But then that brings up your handgun cartridges.
Yeah.
You're starting to get to roll over, or just you're on the balance point between the two. And again, if we're talking about fun with the lever action 45-70 and an opportunity to use it, how many times do you get to shoot your 44 mags, your 357 magnums? And pigs are once again the answer. I don't know. It'd be fun to get out with a revolver and do some close action with them.
One of the first hogs I shot in Texas, maybe the first, was with a revolver. It wasn't your average revolver. This was in 2007 with a 460 Smith & Wesson Magnum.
I was going to guess that.
And the funny thing is, this had a scope on it.
Oh my gosh.
And we were on our way out to where we were going to hunt. I was shooting Hornady ammo, and Neil Davies with Hornady was there with me, and we saw a hog run up the road ahead of us, and we squealed to a stop, and I jumped up and was just walking up there.
Oh, wait a minute. You squealed to a stop on a pig hunt?
Touche. we carefully brought the side-by-side to a halt.
Okay, safely.
And then I carefully exited the vehicle and proceeded up the road.
Okay.
Anyway, I was looking for this hog in the thicket right there for reasons only known to him. He came squirting out across in front of me, and I don't know what happened. Some kind of autopilot in the back of my brain engaged. He was maybe 25 yards away, but next thing I knew, those handgun crosshairs were floating on the front of his shoulder, and suddenly the gun went off and the pig's going bloop, bloop, bloop to the edge of the road. And I couldn't believe I'd hit this running pig with a giant handgun and a scope. I mean, it's not exactly your best for fast action, but sometimes the stars line up, and again, we were on a control effort down there, and we had a beautiful hog shot squarely through the shoulders.
There you go. I've taken a few with handguns too, but I was testing out a 10 millimeter. First time I'd hunted any game with it, and we were doing the feral hog thing down in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at it and thought, I don't know if this is going to be sufficient. 1911, boom, shot this hog. He took off running, and I thought, I didn't think it was going to work. Boom, boom, boom. Gave it 3 more, and I think I hit it 3 out of 4 shots. Mm-hmm. The first one was right where it was supposed to be, and that's essentially what did him in, right through the lungs. But of course, with that little bullet, it takes some time for them to realize they've been shot and they're going to bleed out. But that one worked too, just a little 10, it's about like the 357. So,
and sometimes you just have funny things happen. Wild hogs, just like humans, are individuals, and some of them are tougher than others. That brought to mind a wild hog that I shot that should have never gone an inch. It was a great big warthog in Mozambique, and I shot him with a 416 Ruger. Mm-hmm. And I hit him just in front of the rear hip. The bullet exited the point of his offside shoulder, and he went 70 yards as if he was unhurt.
Yeah. That stuff happens, folks, not just with pigs, whether they're real pigs or feral pigs or any kind of a hybrid, but I've done the same thing with deer and antelope of various kinds. You just cannot count on every animal to react exactly the same to what you would consider to be an absolutely perfect, deadly shot. You've always got to expect the unexpected. Stuff happens. Well, I think we've got a broad selection of suitable cartridges for hogs. And most people probably are going to scoff at these ideas of a 223 and all, but your evidence to the contrary, you suggest it really works. So I think
it's not my choice for, effective one and done kind of hunting, but man, if you're like this government helicopter hunter was, where he's buying ammo by the pallet, you're not going to want to do that with something like the 6.5 x 300 Weatherby.
Yeah, right. No kidding. Yeah, that's the expensive option right there for taking care of some weeds.
Yeah.
So, do you eat the feral hogs that you shoot when you need some pork?
Absolutely. I don't eat all of them. Obviously, sometimes you're shooting too many to process.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
I think wild hog meat, especially anything shy of the real big old nasty boars, is good. And if it's possible, folks, that you can find a wild food bank or some kind of an institution nearby where you're hunting that will take and process that meat and distribute to the needy, by all means do so. And if you shoot a young one, like a 80 pounder, like you mentioned,
Mm,
that's great meat.
yeah.
Process that thing,
Right.
get it in your freezer, and
But do be aware of the potential for trichinosis, right?
yes,
Yeah. As with any pork, you want to bring it up to 160 degrees, is it?
160, 165. Just
Yeah.
cook it just like you would any other pork.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
boy, it
or
is.
bear meat.
I do love it. I like to get out and shoot a pig whenever I need some pork. My wife just loves pork chops, so it gives me an excuse to go. But
It earns you some brownie points.
ooh,
Yeah.
just go hog wild for those.
You're a punny fellow.
Sometimes they're pretty bad puns too. Well, I mean, I think what we're essentially telling folks is that if you have them, shoot them. It really
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It all seems to work. And it's a great opportunity to play around with your different cartridges, rifles, and loads to find out what works and then apply that to your regular game hunting. But I think we really do a favor for landowners who are having issues with these feral hogs,
Yeah.
as well as wildlife management areas. You're doing
Mhm.
wildlife a favor by getting rid of these hogs as well. So go out with your favorite rifle if you can and try to do some hog hunting, because my gosh, they're a problem from Mexico to Canada
Yeah.
and all points between.
And I would add to that, kind of piggybacking off the learning process with your favorite firearms.
Piggybacking.
I
He just
couldn't
never
help it.
quits.
Take the time to do some forensic analysis.
Oh,
if you
good
want to
point.
learn about your rifle, your cartridge,
Yeah.
and your bullet system,
Yes,
don't
yes.
just look up, nudge it with your toe.
Yeah.
Flop it over, look at the entrance wound, the exit wound, and if you have the chance to help take it apart back at the skinning shed, look at what your bullet did, how it performed.
Mhm.
You will learn a lot. You can go down and shoot 6 hogs. Some of us in areas in the West, we get 1 deer a year if we're fortunate enough to find and shoot one.
Right.
You don't learn a lot very
Right.
fast doing that. It's better to go
point.
test bullets on hogs or in Africa on plains game.
Yeah. And the hogs in America are a little cheaper.
A lot cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. Now, one gentleman told me when I was talking about feral pigs and hog shooting, he said, you cannot call them hogs. A hog is essentially, I think he said it was a fully mature male was the hog. Otherwise, you had to call them pigs. I don't know what the rules are, folks, but if it squeals and it's not behind somebody's fence with his brand on him, I think you're probably legal to shoot a pig. Just don't make a pig of yourself.
Not just legal. In some cases, you're obligated.
Are you?
That's the moral thing to do.
All right. Have you anything else to add to this porcine discussion of ours today?
A poor scene or a porcine?
Porcine. I foreseen a porcine in your future.
I think something we can draw from this menagerie of cartridges and the obvious enthusiasm you and I have for using them to perforate these marauding invasive species is, folks, you can probably use just about what you want within reason. Don't go shooting a pig with a 17 HMR because you're just going to hurt it and never find it. But if you have something that you like to shoot, go work it out on hogs and do conservation a favor and have some fun.
All right. There you go, folks. We hope we didn't make too big of a pig of ourselves on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors, but we certainly appreciate you all coming to the trough to feed with us. We'll see you next time on Honest and Shoot Straight.